welcome or welcome back to Messages by Human Design Profile. If you're here, you may be an investigator martyr or the 1-3 profile, or you're like, what the hell is this? If you don't have your chart yet, I put a link in the description for you to grab yours. You'll need the same information that you need for your natal chart. So your birthday, time and location. Human design is a little bit more finicky as far as when it comes to the time of birth, because there are some aspects that can change in your chart depending on what time you were born. So if you don't know, well, for one, of course, make sure that is correct. And for two, if you don't know the exact time that you were born, but maybe you have an intuition, or maybe you have heard that you were born in the morning, afternoon, evening, overnight, then just kind of use a time correlating to that time of day. So once you put that information in, you'll get your body graph. As well as it'll have listed under there, I'm sorry, words. I'm struggling to find words. I apologize. I'll get it together here. Sorry about that. So you'll find some other great information on there, such as your type, your definition, your strategy, your inner authority, your not self theme, and your incarnation cross. All of these elements work together in tandem. The profile is certainly not the most important aspect. It's definitely up there. However, like I said, it's not necessarily the most important. But everything on there is great to explore and dig in deeper to. So I'm going to leave it there because, again, words. Are you guys struggling with words lately? Like, what the hell? So again, if you are here, then you would be the investigator martyr or the 1-3 profile. Last time, or the first videos that I had put out, we read from the definitive book of human design, and I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to read the personal section here. So that's this little blurb and then these 2 paragraphs. And then of course we'll move on to the reading portion. So it says, you are consciously focused on finding inner strength by establishing a secure foundation, while your unconscious design naturally bumps into things that continually surprise you and others with accidental discoveries. You have a deeply internal destiny and can be like a chameleon, not wanting to draw too much attention to yourself until you feel secure as an authority. Gray areas can make you feel weak and uncomfortable and drive you to seek answers. An open and willing student, you are on a path to develop strength through mastery. You are here to be in charge of your own life, as well as a voice and person of authority in your field of expertise. Learning about relationships is a lifelong trial and error journey for you. As you travel along, head down and absorbed in introspection, and yet bumping into people along the way. When something about a relationship isn't secure or harmonious, you can become uncomfortable and break the bond. You will then renegotiate the bond, either strengthening the relationship or bringing it to an end. This can happen repeatedly and is the correct way for your relationships, and is the correct way that your relationships are deepened and kept healthy or brought to completion so you can move on to one that works. In addition, your martyr side has a tendency to look at all of life as a potential untruth, even while your investigator side is seeking a solid truth to build its authority around. You cannot be lied to. And even as a child, you quickly found out who was telling you the truth and what you could trust. If you can surrender, your strategy and authority will guide you correctly through life, as your first line personality augments the trial and error process with further investigation. It's also important that you have control over your environment, as you have to be free to progress organically from one discovery to the next. You are empowered when encouraged to investigate or speak the truth about what does not work. Very cool. I might have mentioned this before or last time, but I had a mentor that was, he's a 1-3 profile. And, when I started reading, or when I started, kind of diving a bit further into human design, it really made sense. Because he is just constantly seeking information. And even so much where, for a while there, we kind of broke apart or didn't communicate as much, because in his words, he didn't feel like he had anything that he could kind of teach. So anyway, it is really just kind of interesting. You have this foundation of wanting to know how things work. And that third line profile is going to kind of bring you those experiences to figure out. But I think part of the hard the hard part can be realizing when to break those bonds, like it was saying, because that's part of your whole thing, is that you bump into things, you develop these relationships, and then like it was saying, if you start kind of noticing some shifty shit going on and you just have a natural inclination to that, then you break that bond and you start renegotiating just to kind of see if you can get it back on track. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But when you can't, it might be hard to let those things go. But also, it's just recognizing that by doing so, by letting them go, you're opening that energy up for, like it was saying, the right ones to come along that you are supposed to have an experience with. Not that that makes it any easier, but maybe just understanding that that is part of maybe why your relationships have been the way they have been, or maybe how you are in your relationships. And relationships are anything from platonic, romantic, business, right? Any type of dealings with anybody else. There's also this need to be kind of stimulated. You might get bored easily if you don't, because that third line is okay, we need something to we need something to do, we need something to kind of wrap our minds around, and that first line wants to kind of be an expert at it. So they're gonna want to really kind of dig into things, right? So yeah, does that sound like you? And then, of course, for the tarot portion, I don't necessarily have we're just going to do a 6-card spread, 2 rows of 3 cards. I can't remember what we did last time. Was it 4 cards 2 rows of 4? I can't remember. But of course, just like the Zodiac readings, my intention is for the message to resonate with those of you that have this profile. And it's general, so it can go anywhere. We'll talk about all of the things that come up. So, 2 more times here. One more. There we go. That felt good. Let's see. We have the Devil. That's the 4 of Swords. The Ace of Cups. The 4 of Pentacles. 3 of Swords. 2 of Swords. Interesting. And then the Page of Swords. Heavy swords energy going on here. Let me just make sure. Okay. So we'll go through the cards as we do. And it's interesting that, like I was talking about, you know, the hardest part, or maybe not hardest, whatever, one of the more difficult parts would be that breaking bonds and understanding that that is part of your process, because this feels like there's a bond that's turned septic, toxic. And, you know, I mean, that could be anything from a relationship, a romantic relationship, platonic relationship. It could be a job. Right. I mean, it could literally be any aspect. It would be situational, I guess, depending on your situation. Still finding my words, I swear. So we start with the Devil here. And the Devil talks about those things that have control over us. It could talk about addictions, phobias, fears, the things that we numb ourselves out with. It could talk about self-sabotage, temptations. And in this little jar, you know, there are 2 people there. So again, you know, I mean, this could be a relationship. It could be a business partnership. But it would be something that maybe has, you know, just kind of either gotten out of control, or, like I said, you know, might have an element of toxicity to it. I mean, codependency, things like that. And we have the 4 of Pentacles underneath. And the 4 of Pentacles talks about holding on too tight. You know, we have this rabbit here that's packed up all its shit, you know, and it's leaving. Like, they don't care how heavy the baggage is. They're just not going to let go of it. So again, you know, I mean, these 2 cards together, and especially right at the start of the reading, I mean, there's something that is being held onto fairly tightly, and it may not be conducive to like your growth and moving you forward. And then we have the 4 of Swords. And the 4 of Swords talks about rest. I mean, swords have to deal with our minds, intellect, the way that we perceive our reality, I see the swords as being ego as well, because that's generally where we hear our egos and our minds. So this to me has this feeling of just not wanting to see it. You know, like maybe even not wanting to deal with this situation. This could even be, you know, the book was talking about renegotiating bonds. And that could be, you know, like just kind of being in this period of like, let's see how it goes. And we have the Three of Swords underneath that. And the Three of Swords talks about rejection, disappointment, heartbreak. But again, with the swords, it's how those emotions live in our minds. You know, again, I don't know if this is specifically poison ivy, but it has that feeling to me that, you know, it's like creeping up this tree here. There could be a third person involved in this situation. Doesn't have to be. But it's kind of like wanting to, like this Four of Swords would want to, it has this feeling of wanting to avoid having to go through this. So it's like, you know, I'll settle for this thing over here just so I don't have to go through this, because this does suck, right? Like that is why that breaking bonds part would be so difficult. It's always difficult. It is never easy breaking bonds, regardless of what your profile is. It just so happens that specifically with the third line, and that goes for all third lines, you're going to have these experiences where you make bonds, you break bonds. And then for you, there's this investigation, this information gathering aspect with that first line. And I believe the book even mentioned too that, you know, like relationships would be a little bit difficult in the first half, I think, of life, which is understandable. Absolutely. And then we have the Ace of Cups over here. And generally, the Ace of Cups is great. It shows, you know, your cup is overflowing. It generally talks about new love, having this new lease on life. Right? Like feeling like you are fulfilled and, you know, that you have enough for yourself, but to the point where you would be able to share with somebody else. And that's when we move to the Two of Cups. But this to me has this aspect of like, it has this feeling of, you know, only considering the positives, like not looking at the whole thing, because we do have this figure down here that is filling the cup. So it has this feeling of like there could be the other person involved in this situation, or people could just be almost kind of pulling a wool over your eyes, like, you know, just kind of almost trying to keep you drunk, quote unquote. And I'm not saying that that has to be in the literal sense. I'm just going by the imagery on the card, to where you don't see the truth of the situation, or so you don't take your cup and walk away. It doesn't have to be the other person doing that. I mean, you could just be, again, like kind of in this like avoidance type energy where, you know, we have a good time. Most of the time it's fine. Most of the time. And then the Two of Swords talks about, you know, indecision. This bird is blinded here. again, with the swords having to do with our thoughts, it's like, just kind of either not knowing what decision is best, or not wanting, again, to make a decision. Or even just kind of wondering, like, what happens afterwards? Like, where do I go from here? Or how does it look without having this job? Or how does it look without having this friendship, without having this relationship? It's kind of, like this comfort box thing, right? Like I'm my comfort zone is being in this energy, even though it may not be that great. But it's interesting that we have the 4, 3, and 2 of swords here. And it's almost kind of blocking in this Ace of Cups. Like almost even preventing the Ace of Cups from coming in. Which is interesting. And like I said, the Ace of Cups could be another person. It could just be you feeling better about yourself, about your situation, having a better outlook, like looking forward. Just, having a good time, this kind of carefree feeling here. And then we have the Page of Swords at the bottom of the deck. And the pages can bring messages, right? So, there could be somebody that just kind of pops in with information that just kind of maybe helps you make your mind up. And we have the Knight of Swords, like right behind that. Or is this the Knight of... Cups? It looks like swords. Anyway. Very kind of fast moving. They just kind of do without thinking. There's a playful energy to this, but there's also a mysterious kind of energy to it too. So, there could be information that just kind of comes out of the blue, and they're wearing blue, that could help you make a decision on this. You could just all of a sudden make your mind up. But again, regardless of what the situation is to you, or, who's involved, or whatever, again, it really does come down to what we were talking about at the beginning, as far as part of your process is to bump into people, experiences, right? And you are to gain information and knowledge and experience from those things. And when the energy of those experiences is done, and if you cannot renegotiate it to a point where you feel comfortable again, then it's time to kind of allow that bond to be broken, so that you can open up space and open up the energies for the new thing to come in that does serve you better. It's all practice, right? And it talks about using your strategy and authority. So again, you'll find that on your chart. And definitely something to look into. But you know, if you are just kind of learning, if you are just stepping into the realm of human design, of course, look into it because it is a lot of great information. But you would know, and the book even says that, like, you know, like you can't bullshit a bullshitter, right? So don't let people try to bullshit you. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.